podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Okay. Welcome to 989 Tech Talk. This show is in affiliation with Africa Business Radio, your number one online radio station. 989 Tech Talk covers all things tech in the agricultural space. My name is Michelle. I am mad about tech. No. Okay. Welcome to 989 Tech Talk. This show is in affiliation with Africa Business Radio, your number one online radio station. 989 Tech Talk covers all things tech in the agricultural space. My name is Michelle. I am mad about tech. No.
Doing business in Africa can be complicated. Politicians sometimes create circumstances that hurt businesses and consumers, and then they hide behind a wall of to avoid taking responsibility for their bad economic policies. On Red Tape Africa, we slice through the jargon, drawing a direct link between government actions and their effects on businesses across the continent. Red Tape Africa is where we break down the jargons of business and economic policies in plain English so that you can understand how the impacts on your business and on you. Join us every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa Business Radio as we deliver an impartial verdict on these policies. Red Tape Africa, economic policy impact in plain English. Through the ball with Red Tape Africa. Follow us on all social media at Red Tape Africa and tweet at us using the hashtag Red Tape Africa. Red Tape Africa, economic policy impact in plain English.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from Stratton to Straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey. You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Sports teaches you character. It teaches you to play by the rules. It teaches you to know what it feels like to win and lose. It teaches you about life. That is a quote from Billie Jean King. My name is David Hunday, and you are listening to Red Tape Africa on Africa Business Radio, the show where we break down economic policies for you in plain English, no long story. On Red Tape Africa today, we'll be talking sports, the business of sports, the politics of sports, the implications of sports on a Nigerian and on an African level. And to discuss this here with me today, I have a very special guest. But before we introduce her, let me just mention that later on in the show, we'll also be taking your comments and views. So don't forget to tweet at us with hashtag RedTapeAfrica. And you can also send in your voice notes to +234 701 65. Sorry, let me take that again. +234 701 650 8975. That is +234 650 +234 701 650 8975. Don't forget to like and follow our pages on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Africa Biz Radio and at Africa Business Radio. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, we have a special guest in the studio with us today. Her name is Liz Okogun. Now, there's quite a bit to get through, so before I let her introduce herself, I'm going to do quite a bit of talking myself because what a profile. Now, Liz is a former 100 and 200 meter sprinter, a school sprinter, who unfortunately didn't go pro. Fortunately or unfortunately. She's passionate about sports development and youth empowerment. Currently, she's the founder and CEO of Zinnovation Sports, a sports management and advisory firm. And she's a sub-lead managing the Sports, Environment and Tourism Group and a member of the eminent Focal Group under the Sports Industry Thematic Group umbrella in the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. Prior to starting her sport management career, Liz had work experience at Temple Management Company, Standard Chartered Bank, and Chapel Hill Denham Group. Through the course of her career, she has organized a number of sporting events, working with top-class professional athletes, federations, and international regulators in the sports industry. And in addition to all this, Liz is a certified digital marketing professional from the Digital Marketing Institute in Ireland. She has also attended prestigious sports courses from Columbia University, Lagos Business School, and La Liga Business School. Liz holds a BA in Business Administration from Babcock University. Hi, Liz.
Hi, David.
It's great to meet you here today.
I know.
We're going to be talking about, first of all, about your work with this innovation group, and then we're also going to be taking your viewpoints today about what needs to happen from a government point of view, because obviously this is a policy show. So from a policy and political point of view, what needs to happen to promote sports in Nigeria, what the implication of promotion of sports in Nigeria is in a business sense, in an economic sense, and also in a political sense. But before we get to that, let's take a quick break.
Doing business in Africa can be complicated. Politicians sometimes create circumstances that hurt businesses and consumers, and then they hide behind a wall of to avoid taking responsibility for their bad economic policies. On Red Tape Africa, we slice through the jargon, drawing a direct link between government actions and their effects on businesses across the continent. Red Tape Africa is where we break down the jargons of business and economic policies in plain English so that you can understand how the impacts on your business and on you. Join us every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa Business Radio as we deliver an impartial verdict on these policies. Red Tape Africa, economic policy impact in plain English.
You're still listening to Red Tape Africa with your host, David Hundane, and we are in the studio with Liz Okogun. Now, Liz, before we get started, from a sort of general point of view, let's establish a couple of things. First of all, sports, the business side of sports. Obviously, sports it's first and foremost entertainment, but over and away from that, it's also a business. It's also a huge political platform to some people. So, from a Nigerian point of view, in a Nigerian context, what do you think is the optimum impact that sports should have? What economic impact do you think sports can have? And if you have figures that you can quote, that would help. And also, what, in terms of projecting Nigeria's soft power across the world, what impact do you think sports should have?
Okay. Sports, according to Nelson Mandela, has the power to change the world. Sports has so much impact on the economy through so many ways. One, sports helps health-wise. And I think that's where Nigeria is stuck to. Oh, sports is exercise. And we have this misconception of sports in Nigeria, that sports is only about participation.
Right.
So I spoke to a couple of kids and I was like, what do you think of sports? And all of them were like, sports is running, jumping, this, that. But there's so much involved in sports. Sports, 80 to 90% of sports revenue is from media.
Right.
So when you watch Premier League and co, it's not the players that hold the camera.
Yeah.
The players are the content. So for Nigeria, everybody thinks sports is really just participate. Go play soccer, go play this, go play that. So according to, based on your question on the power of sports on the Nigerian economy, we have 40 million kids in primary and secondary school. Imagine all of them are participating in sports. That alone has opened an industry for manufacturing. So imagine 40 million children are to wear shoes, are to wear socks, are to wear shirts, shorts, and all. That's the demand. But can we meet that demand? No. Do we want to import 40 million shirts, shoes, socks from China?
Ideally, no.
No, we can't. So that's to tell you the impact of sports. Sports has this effect on people. It gives you, people pay for it without fiscal return. That's what you get when you watch sports. This tension, the suspense, the wow. And why? That's because they're human beings like you. That guy can do that. That babe can do this. So that alone gives human beings that satisfaction that this could be me and I'm enjoying it. So that's the power of sports on people. There's so many things sports can do. Sports also helps with peace and justice. It helps with gender equality. By the time kids are involved in sports, it keeps them off the streets. They get empowered. I always tell people that sports, your body can do wonders for you. And the beauty of sports is competitive, active movement. That's sports. So that's why there's Olympics, there's Paralympics, there's Special Olympics. And when you think about it, one has to do with mental disability, one has to do with physical. Then one is ability. Yeah. You understand? So that lets you know that across all body types, you can get involved one way or the other. There's even blind soccer.
So I've heard.
Yeah, so that's just to tell you that there's sports for everybody. It doesn't have to be competition. And for us in Nigeria, we always have this impression that to get involved in sports, you must get to Premier League. There are different divisions. A professional athlete is an athlete that is being paid. So you can get paid at a level. Yes, we're all aspiring to be on the Premier League level, but you can get in one way or the other. The Premier League has a certain amount of players it can accommodate. The NBA has a certain amount of players it can accommodate. So it can accommodate the whole world. So you can fall in somewhere. So sports has a lot it can do in the economy based on manufacturing, education, so many. So let me just.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was going to segue into this at some point in the show, but I think we might as well go into it now. Before we go into what you do at Innovation Sports. Now, you mentioned that obviously the Premier League, the NBA, these sports scenes that we look up to, obviously may not be all that accessible.
Yes.
In terms of participation. Now, our local leagues, I don't like using that word local, but our Nigerian sports leagues, our Nigerian sports scene, obviously are not ideal.
Yeah.
So from a business point of view, being someone who has had extensive exposure to the business side of sports, and obviously I appreciate that this is a very broad question because different sports have different answers.
Exactly.
But with your privileged insider viewpoint, what is wrong with the business of Nigerian sports management? Okay.
Like I said earlier, we have this misconception of sports in Nigeria. One, we don't keep records. We don't have data. So we don't know the impact of what we're doing, and we don't even set targets. We don't see the power of what we have in sports. We have this, like I said, we have this misconception that sports is participatory. But sports has so much impact in terms of career development and capacity building. There's I call it the on-field career, the off-field career. On-field, that's all. On-field, yeah, they are 1% of the industry. That's the players, the elite professionals and co. But the bottom line are the masses. Who, on the Premier League, who pays for these tickets is the community. Without people buying tickets or buying merchandise, those teams are nothing. It's just going to be like any regular watching someone play on the road. So in Nigeria, I think that's where we've not really tapped into what sports can do for the community. And two, we have too much, we depend on the government to run that industry for us. But sports in most countries is private sector driven. I'm going to go into the management of sports, which is the business angle of sports. The definition of sports marketing is selling your product through sports. So why in the US and other countries, why are they really involved in sports? Because they know the ROI.
It's a marketing vehicle, yeah.
Thank you. So just as little as using a player's image, the media coverage, like the Super Bowl adverts, things like that. You can imagine why. That's because of the audience drawn to that platform. So in Nigeria, if you are playing a game, go to the stadium, it's so scanty. Most times it's filled with maybe just families. We don't have that fan base for our local league. And the government is taking too much on them. They already have so many things they are dealing with.
So is that the fault of, is it the sports industry pushing responsibility onto the government, or is it the government refusing to let go?
Okay, I'm just going to give an example. Like the Nigerian Premier League, out of the 20 teams, 18 are government owned.
Right.
You understand?
Yes.
So I won't say it's the government's problem, because the government have been involved. They've been funding these teams. So what I would advise really, and I think is actually really going on now, is the government is actually trying to get partnership from the private sector involved. Yeah, it's not easy for them to let go, because I know some states try to let go, but who's going to take it up? That's really it. And in the Nigerian sports industry, we've not really structured ourselves in a way that investors can come in. So it's like, from my experience in the stockbroking and investment banking arm, we already know that we have regulatory bodies like the SEC and the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the CBN. If you try anything funny, they shut down your practice. Yeah. But in sports, we don't have that. So it's not really a regulated space for investors to come in.
So there are lots of quacks.
Thank you. So that's why the government has, for now, are holding on to these teams. By the time there's that structure in place, I'm going to tell you, Manchester United and a couple of the teams on the Premier League are quoted.
Yes.
On different stock exchange. Do you know what it means to be quoted? You are regulated.
Yes.
So you can't cheat people. Anything can happen. And for going public, a lot of funding capital is coming from the stock exchange. So what are you going to do? So that's what I'm saying. For now, I think Nigeria are gradually transitioning into that business space. But I can say now that the government they have too much they are handling in the sports space, which is not supposed to be. So they are to gradually transition into partnering with a couple of private sector businesses to see how to move this forward. So it's...
Hold that thought, because when we come back from the short break, I'm going to be asking you about your policy recommendation.
Okay.
From a government point of view, what you think government sports policy should be for Nigeria, which obviously is, again, a very big ask. Yeah. But I believe you, if anyone can answer it, you can. And I also want to get more of an insight into what you do at Innovation Sports.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
With Red Tape Africa. Follow us on all social media at Red Tape Africa and tweet at us using the hashtag Red Tape Africa. Red Tape Africa. Economic policy impact in plain English.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from stricken to straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey.
You're still listening to Red Tape Africa on Africa Business Radio. I just want to quickly mention again that you can send in your tweets and we'll try to read them on the show. You should use the hashtag Red Tape Africa, that is hashtag Red Tape Africa. You can also send your voice notes to +234 701 650 8975 and we will try our best to play them on the show. Now, Liz, before we go on, I want to tell you a story. Something that happened in 2015 where I was still in marketing. I was on the agency side. So I was working for an agency that handled the business for one of Nigeria's biggest brewery companies. It's an international brewery company with a significant Nigerian presence. And at the time, they were in talks to take over sponsorship of the Nigerian Premier League. The old sponsor the contract had come to an end and they weren't going to renew. So this brewery company had this idea that they wanted to sort of own Nigerian football. So the Premier League, the national teams, all the national teams, the senior national team, male, female, junior, all of them. And in fact, if you recall, as at 2004, when Nigeria went to the 2014 World Cup, that brewery company, I'm sure you know who they are, kind of owned that experience as well. They had this Shine On Super Eagles thing they had going. That was all part of that thematic campaign which I worked on. And at the point of negotiation where it was like, okay, this is how much we're offering, which was a bigger amount than the whole of Nigerian football has ever seen. And that was what was on the table. And it was, this is the offer, and we're gonna basically not just sponsor the league, but we're also going to own it in a way. So we want contractual guarantees that, for example, players will not be owed their salaries because we're putting down this money, and things have to happen in a certain way, because obviously the parent company in Europe does not want its brand associated with, with dysfunction. So things have to happen in a certain way. And somewhere along the line, all of a sudden, talks broke down. And there were whispers that, some people said some certain amount has to be paid into this account, some percentage has to be paid, like a kickback and that. Obviously, none of this was ever proven, as it rarely is in Nigeria. But yeah, the deal was basically yanked at the last minute, and then a few months later, Nigeria went into a recession, and the possibility of such a deal ever coming to Nigerian football again was completely taken off the table. And as we speak now, the Nigerian Premier League does not have a sponsor. So if you are the sports minister, or you're advising the sports minister, obviously bear in mind that the league management company, the NFF, these are independent bodies. You might have some influence over them, but you don't control them. Yeah. And if you try to exert control over them, FIFA will ban them.
Exactly.
So, and obviously this seems like I'm focusing on football, because football is the biggest sport, but this is sort of like a wider commentary on the state of Nigerian sport. As a sports minister, or as someone with significant heft within a government circle in sports, What do you do to fix this kind of problem?
Like I said earlier, we don't have a structured industry. So I think that question should really be answered by a sports lawyer. But I'm going to try as much as possible to give my 2 cents. For that kind of scenario, I'm just going to go back to my investment banking days. I will actually suggest an escrow be done. Escrows are guided by the CBN and a couple of regulatory bodies. Whatever is agreed has to be sorted. And also, I would say, based on what you said, there's definitely an issue of integrity. And we all know the Nigerian system and corruption. And corruption is also one of the things that's eating up the sports space. So, if I'm to advise the minister, I'm going to keep on quoting this. Let's not make the abnormal normal. I always tell people, don't make the abnormal normal. Do the right thing. So this is not only going to, most times it's because we are quite myopic in our thinking. Like you said, we went into recession. They don't believe in the power of sports and the impact of what sports can do for the community. These guys are telling you they're going to take care of the players. They're going to take care. I think it's quite selfish for anybody to tarnish that kind of arrangement. I also tell people sometimes, I'm sorry, I'm kind of spiritual, but I tell people sports is a thing of God. It is selfless. To do the business of sports, you have to be selfless. Money will locate you in this space no matter what. But sports is, no matter how much some people in the business of sports try to downgrade the players are actually the main attraction of it. So no matter what you do, even though you set up the stadium, you set up the stadium, people are there because of them. So why not take care of them? So we have this Nigerian mindset of humbling them. You understand? Meanwhile, you are to empower them. So I know there are a couple of unions, but I don't feel they are that strong to get things done. So if I'm the sports minister, you got to look at the economic side of it, the bigger impact on the environment. No matter what happens, what I always tell people is when you take care of these players, you're having an impact on the younger generation. No matter what. If you look at the US now, everybody wants to be like LeBron James. Everybody wants to be like Dwayne Wade. I even know they're over there. They have some. Most of them own foundations. Most of them own charities. Why? They were empowered to the point that they can give back to their communities. So there's not too much impact on the government, you understand, or even companies. You can now say that there's now players involved that have become stakeholders in community development. So things as little as corruption and lack of integrity involved is enough to turn people off from that space. So that's why it's a thing that I think we need a really structured space. We need to get regulators involved to make this happen. Nobody wants to put their money where it's just going to be used for someone to take their families abroad and all. During the games, there's VIP section, as in things like that. Like it's
this
right.
This brings me to the question I want to ask about what you do at Zinnovation. Now,
okay.
Obviously, based on your background in investment banking, you know a thing or two about corporate governance.
Yeah.
How do you marry corporate governance with sports in the Nigerian context?
Okay, I would, for me, I'm going to go into what I do in Zinnovation. So for me, in Zinnovation, I'm more sports and education. Because I feel, based on my observation, the older generations have failed us. So we have no choice. Sports is community. That's why I say sports is a thing of God. It's community. That's why you see a homeless child end up becoming something in the sports space. based on his body.
Right.
Exactly. It's not, sports doesn't know whether your mom or dad is rich, or your mom or dad have any estate or anything. No, sports knows the child for your hard work, what you've put into your whatever field you've picked. So what we do in Innovation is really we reorient kids through sports. So we let them know you can actually have a career in sports regardless of your field of study. Sports, I would say sports is really a product.
And that your career does not necessarily mean being an athlete.
Thank you. You understand. So they are doctors, they are financial advisors, they are physiotherapists, they are psychologists. There are so many things. They are commentators. They are just, sports is a world on its own. Yeah. And like I said earlier, sports is a product that people pay for to get satisfaction, but you don't see the tangible return from it because it's an emotion. It has emotional impact on people. So at Innovation, we try to carry kids along. We are trying to reorient kids through with the Nigerian sports space. So one way or the other, we had no choice but to get into the older space because we need these older athletes or business people to inspire the younger ones. So I go to schools to do talks with the kids and let them know like there's more to sports than just running, jumping, things like that. So we let them know that you can actually have an impact on your community through sports. By the time you do well in whatever you are doing, you become an inspiration to others. So we try as much as possible to get the children on that. Then we also create pipelines for them. Because anybody that comes in, be it off-field career or on-field, they want to know what next. So whatever program you're doing, you should be able to take them from point A to B. So we try as much as possible we are open to as much partners as possible. So we want people, are you going to take them from SS3 to scholarship in the university? Are you going to give them a sports media internship? Things like that. So we try as much as possible to get people involved in that space. For us, it's really an integrity thing. We need, these children are the future. So it's not a short-term movement, it's a long-term movement. So we believe that they would be the ones to change the environment one way or the other. If you go to the US, we already have kids being celebrated from as little as 10, 11 in their own level. But over here, we underestimate the power of normal inter-house sports. We don't even give it that attention, that coverage. That alone, just by the fastest boy in your school being put on TV, being put on a billboard, has so much effect on other kids. Isn't that David? Isn't that Elizabeth? Things like that has so much impact. So I can say sports has so much power that I just decided to take the education part of it, because education is a structured environment. No matter what, every year there are children in new classes. Every children are being born every day. So no matter what, we have people, we have the population to move that space. So if we don't start catching them young, we're going to miss the opportunity. And one thing, if you find out majority of the top athletes, if you go find out what time they started whatever sports they were into, 4 years, some 2. And that's because their body at that point gets to adapt to the sport. So it's really teaching them at that age that you don't have to put your head or get distracted all over. Just pick something and be good at it. That's it. So I think that's the little I can put out there for Innovation.
And from a regulatory point of view, do you interface with government bodies? Do you have dealings with the government? And if so, what is your experience of that?
So yeah, the government, one, I know, welcomes a lot of ideas as long as it's helping the kids, it's helping the community, helping with community development.
So just to be clear, the government does not firewall you.
Sorry?
The government does not stonewall you.
No, they don't.
Okay.
They don't.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, especially with the new minister in place, Mr. Sunday Dare. He's quite, like, I'm really impressed and really, like, I'm thanking. I appreciate the fact that he was.
We don't hear that often on this show.
Yeah.
This is the first, I think.
Exactly. He's amazing. He's open to so many ideas because it's never been heard of. And I feel the previous, he observed, he listened to what was happening before, what's going on now. So I've seen him at least three times now, and he's open to different ideas. Whatever you put on his table, he's willing to even add to whatever you have, and he's willing to push it one way or the other. So at the end of the day, I think it's just really structure. And from the government's end, it's just really them making the environment as business conducive as possible. That's really it. And that's by putting policies in place that can support the sports industry. So it's really, I'll give you an example, education now. Yes, we know in schools they do physical education, but physical education is theory aspect of sports. How big is a field? What's the size of a football field? Things like that. Inter-house sports period comes. After inter-house sports, what happens? But we need a system whereby the children specialize in something, even outside the four corners of the school. They know, and one, it has its impact on their health, and it decreases death at a young age. That helps the government. It helps from people always complaining the government is not doing this, the government is not doing that. If you take care of yourself, you'll be good. So sports empowers them even at the education level. So I was in Cape Verde in 2012, and in Cape Verde, for every block they had like inbuilt cement gyms there. Then you wake up in the morning, 7 a.m. there are sports officers on ground. That's what they call them. And the sports officers, so the community gathers based on your street or block or area. And these sports officers jog around with them and everybody disperses. They also observe siesta. So all businesses are shut down between 12 and 1. So we need to take this more serious. It's better than it's better that way than always just talking about it. We need to take action one way or the other. So by the government implementing strict rules or policies on all children must be involved in sports one way or the other. Another thing is, even if we look into the business angle of it, is these kids, imagine these kids having to, when I was doing my presentation, a child asked me, what is our local team? That's in Lekki Phase 1.
Ooh. You don't have one.
We don't have one. You understand? And the children are willing to support. You understand? They are willing to belong somewhere. They won't say, I support the Lekki team. There should be, I support the Ikeja team. I support this, I support that. It brings that sense of, community. I can do this closer to them. If you talk of the LeBron James, I'm sorry, it's far.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. But when you see my older brother, his school is just maybe 2 blocks away. He's getting so much attention based on this. And for the private sector to come into the sports space, what are they looking for is the audience.
Which brings me to what I'm probably not gonna finish asking this question before we go on a break.
Okay.
But I'm gonna ask the question first, then go on a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I'm going to get your take on it. Now, a few weeks ago, I was having a conversation about football, but I think this also applies to athletics and all whatnot now, with my friend Eugene Duru. And what he suggested was that we complain that the NFF has, or the LMC, the NFF have issues, the sports ministry have issues with maybe corruption or whatnot. Why don't we create private frameworks, private leagues that just completely exclude these characters? So kind of like what Social Liga is doing, but on a decentralized national level. So instead of trying to have one Nigerian football league, that there's a centralized body extorting investors and whatnot, you just have your little thing in Lekki. I'll have my little thing in Ojota, and occasionally we might have a league sort of thing, and if we can have 400 or 500 spectators at a game, and that starts growing organically, then the sponsors will come, because that audience exists, and we can start doing that and completely cut out the establishment, which there seems to be a consensus is stifling the growth of sports as a business and as an ecosystem in Nigeria. Is that workable? And if it were to be, what would your recommendations be for that sort of thing? I'm going to quickly go on a break, but when we come back, we're going to address this question.
Doing business in Africa can be complicated. Politicians sometimes create circumstances that hurt businesses and consumers, and then they hide behind a wall of to avoid taking responsibility for their bad economic policies. On Red Tape Africa, we slice through the jargon, drawing a direct link between government actions and their effects on businesses across the continent. Red Tape Africa is where we break down the jargons of business and economic policies in plain English so that you can understand how the impacts on your business and on you. Join us every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa Business Radio as we deliver an impartial verdict on these policies. Red Tape Africa, economic policy impact in plain English. Through the ball with Red Tape Africa. Follow us on all social media at Red Tape Africa and tweet at us using the hashtag Red Tape Africa. Red Tape Africa, economic policy impact in plain English.
You're still listening to Red Tape Africa, and before we went on the break, I was asking Liz what I think is the question of the show so far. Is it possible to cut out the government and government-linked centralized bodies from sports in Nigeria and be successful? And if so, how do we do it?
Okay. So based on what we've said, I know a lot of people in the industry that tend to, I don't want these guys involved. That's the beauty of sports. You don't need them involved. You can do your thing. Inter-house sports, do we need them involved?
No, obviously.
Definitely. So you do your thing. The only thing I think the government can help with is, like I said, make the space conducive for businesses. Also factoring child protection, community development, and I think they can also play a part in regulating the space. So that's what I think they should do. Most times, a lot of people, when they set up, I want to do this league, they just go and get an endorsement letter because they just feel it makes people more comfortable. But it can be so stressful, you understand. And sometimes I've had incidents of people going and being asked to pay for as little as an endorsement letter. But there are some people I've met that have never asked for that kind of thing. Once they believe your whatever idea you have is going to have good impact, they support you. They give you a letter. So what I think really the government should really focus on is just support whatever business is willing to make this happen. Two, I think
when you say support, in terms of tax breaks or in terms of what exactly is involved in that sport?
Yeah. Like the government, yes, should help with incentives for businesses going into the sports space.
Right.
It's like agriculture. Remember when there was the agriculture boom? Everybody should go farm. You get this cheaper.
Yeah.
Things like that. Now, why did they close the border? Because they want us to eat Nigeria. Who is it favoring? Everybody is crying, but it's favoring the farmers. Because we have no choice. In my house, I've never seen so much of fada rice. I've never seen so much of fada rice, and I'm not really a fan of it. But
neither am I, to be fair.
Thank you. Yeah. So like the government should create incentives. Also, that's one part of it. They should support with infrastructure. They should be open to PPPs. You understand? There are companies willing to help, but they really need to regulate and structure that space. That's really it. When they do that, they make investors. When we hear investors, a lot of people always think international. When they say the word investor, people always think international. But as little as a normal, the average Nigerian, if he wants to invest in the sports space, he wants to give back one way or the other. We have as little as even going to create cluster facilities. The way some people go to their villages and set up a school, most times when people are traveling during December, they pack books to the village. Some have built schools, some have built churches. Why not build a sports facility? You understand? Yeah. With as little as 25 or 10 million, you can at least get a standard field. And there's land in these villages. So the government should just really, for them to even get this thing done, the government should give incentives on the materials being brought in to put these things in place, things like that, because they have a massive impact on the community. I'm from Benue State, and Benue State, we are known for basketball because our boys are tall. Exactly. And yes, we had the incident of cultism and a couple of things, but it died down. It died down because the state started getting kids involved with sports and a couple of things. But all those things, there's an extent in which it can go. So the government needs to be open to people should come and help. How long do you want to engage them with just basketball? You understand? They should. I had a talent when I was in the talent management space, and the parents were like, they started training their daughter. Their daughter had no choice but to follow them to the golf course when she was 4. But they had to ask, what is she training for? So they have to be these competitions in place to move them from point A to B. Exactly. So it's like school. You have to write exam at the end of the term. You have to be tested one way or the other. It makes you want to skip that hurdle and move forward. It pushes you. And at the end of the day, I remember in our days we will cram, but later you tend to realize that thing you crammed actually came in handy one way or the other. So that's the way I think government has the opportunity and can help to regulate the space, structure the space. They need to put so much into research so that they understand the impact of what they are doing for in the sports space. So that's really my take on the government and the community and what I feel they should do. Incentives, regulations, and concerning the leagues, you said, just support one way or the other. I think for every league, most times when kids come to me, they are doing this somewhere, I'm like, yeah, if you want to go for it. But I'm always really concerned about post that game or that competition, where are you going to be? You understand? Does it put you on a grade? Does it put you in a framework? Does it put you in a program? Things like that.
And this is a perfect way to segue into, I think, what's going to be one of the final questions I'm going to ask you. Now, there are some countries, Brazil, for example, that have an entire business model built around, well, not an entire business model, but they have their sports industry has a business model that to some extent centers around exporting talent. So the Brazilian Football League, for example, they have some regulations about at what age players are allowed to leave, and then there's a certain minimum valuation that these players have. So obviously we've had people like Neymar Jr. moving from the Brazilian league to La Liga for 60 million euros. So it's a definite source of revenue for them. Now I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe that definitely footballing talent in Nigeria is inferior to that produced in any of these places.
Yeah.
But the revenue that we generate from talent exports is minuscule. Is this also a structure issue, or is there something else? Is there a part of the picture that I'm not seeing?
I agree it's a structure issue. I really agree it's a structure issue. In most cases for our players here, you always hear it's something as little as, it's always so private, you understand? Like there was really nobody involved when these players had to be moved and all. I think I'll use like the NFL or the NBA. There are things, like I said earlier, about players having to give back. You can't be on this platform and not have a foundation. You understand? I need to confirm that, but it seems like it's standard that if you're on the NFL, you must have a foundation. If you're in the NBA, you must have a foundation, because majority of the players are giving back. So for Nigeria, like you said, it's like Nigeria sports business or sports industry has not been tapped at all. I'm aware that we have like intermediaries with the NFF. There are a lot of registered agents and all.
And we export a lot of players.
Yes, exactly. But these players leave and never come back. You understand? Most times they go and don't come back. Why? They've been through so much.
There's nothing to come back to.
Thank you. They've been through so much. And let's not forget, the Nigerian sports space, majority of our players back in the days when our parents would be like, no, you want to go and do what? Play football? For what? You get? So that's why in the innovation we're working towards having educated players. You understand? Educated athletes. Most times when they leave, yes, the guy has to survive. He gets to another country that's willing to give him the basic needs, basic lifestyle, and he rests there. Then he comes back later that he wants to do something little for the community, builds a tap in his village. You understand? But when the community gave to you, you will come back to give back to the community. So I think it's actually beyond the government. The space is not structured for us to really tap into exporting.
You've made this point 3 or 4 times on the show today. So
the space is not structured.
The final question I'm now going to ask, within the context of an unstructured space, what makes you optimistic about the innovation?
Okay, so in the innovation, what we do is really we create pipelines for the kids. And as far as we are concerned, we have partnership with a whole lot of people. And a lot of people, we have a lot of lawyers on ground also as partners, because we want to protect these children. There are many cases of human trafficking based on sports. You understand? Yeah. They come, you get scouted, we take you over there. Then they go out of the country, get scouted, and get stuck.
Yeah.
Especially for those players that have told their whole village, I'm going. Then they get there.
They end up somewhere in Vietnam.
Thank you. So I'm very optimistic, because if these children have the right foundation, as they grow, you tend to explain to them, this is the standard. You don't just sign any contract with anybody. You understand? These are the basic things to check. If this is what you want to do, there's the go-to space is innovation to go ask questions.
Right.
You understand?
So if I'm to read you correctly, you also do advisory.
Yes,
services.
That's what we do. We also do advisory services. We do consultation for parents. Parents are always like, my son has this talent, my daughter has this talent, but I don't know where to start. So we've created pipelines where, okay, put her in this academy, put him in this academy, but he or she must be in school. So we even check if the school has something running also. So we also have schools as clients also.
Do you have I don't want to use the term success stories, but candidates who have been successfully placed in these places?
Yes, we have. For this first term, we were able to place close to 50 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and majority of the time, it's parents have so much impact on these children. And these are kids that have told their parents, I want to do this. And the parents have observed that they actually have this talent. You understand? So they come to us and we place them. But one of the things is we now at a point had to support the sports businesses. Not financially, but you have to be at this standard. You have to have gotten to this point. You must have a location. There are parameters we check before we put kids there, because we don't want any funny stories, because we are recommending you to parents. So we were able, definitely every first term, parents are, what are we tapping this term? First term, new class, what are we going to do for you? So we were able to place at least a minimum of 50 kids this term. And it was really impressive. It just shows, and that's another reason I'm very optimistic, because Nigerian parents are willing to. I've noticed that apart from going to class, you also have to help them with their talents. It's not, majority of us, we went to school, but school didn't really.
I have to say, this is, since I've been presenting this show, this is probably the most positive sort of story that I've heard, because from what I gathered today, you have a sort of I don't want to use the term revolutionary, but a business model that is relatively new in the Nigerian space. It's working. It's having a cultural impact which is unprecedented in my eyes. And most incredibly of all, when you interface with the government actually listens.
Yes. The government, they want to see numbers. They won't see impact. You understand?
Okay.
We've gone beyond this. This era of social media and all has put a lot of people upright. You understand? There's an extent in which you can lie. But this new minister, he doesn't have time for that. He just wants to know. He's the Minister of Youth and Sports Development. So whatever you are doing has to have impact on the community. And sports has serious impact towards reducing delinquency. If these children are not engaged or empowered, they end up finding one other thing to do. So I was telling someone that most of us that live on the island tend to always see things from the island. But when you go to the mainland, see the amount of children hawking. Even if it's for them to wake up in the morning and go to a sports facility, you understand, and they learn a thing or two. I always tell my son that, do you know that you have to be good? Sometimes maths helps you, even in athletics. You have to know your breathing. You understand? You have to count sometimes to be able to move. So everything, they all interrelate. So there's so much sports can do.
That was amazing. We've been speaking to Liz Okogun, the founder CEO of Zinnovation Sports, on the show today, and this has been, apart from the insightful and enlightening experience it has been, I think it's also been a very positive interview with her. For the first time on the show, we've probably heard that a Nigerian government is actually doing what it's supposed to do, which makes for a change. I mean, the name of the show is Red Tape Africa, which in itself implies, bureaucracy, red tape, something, sub-ideal is happening. In this case, that is not the case. Something good is happening. So I think, as much as I call out the government all the time, if the government is actually doing something right, in this case, the sports minister, Mr. Sunday Dare, according to what I've heard, is on the right track. So keep it up, sir. And that's been our episode of Red Tape Africa this week. We'll be back at 2 p.m. next week, Tuesday. Until then, it's your host, David Mundane. Don't forget to keep on interacting with the show using the hashtag Red Tape Africa, and like and follow our pages at Africa Biz Radio and at Red Tape Africa. Good afternoon.
Cut through the ball with Red Tape Africa. Follow us on all social media at Red Tape Africa and tweet at us using the hashtag Red Tape Africa. Red Tape Africa. Economic policy impact in plain English.